welcome to episode 1 of...
He's right behind you.
Ah! That's very scary. I'm Avital.
I'm Jessica.
And our first movie, Friday the 13th, for you to enjoy today on Friday the 13th.
Yes, hopefully this will come out on Friday the 13th.
It will.
Or All Is For Naught.
I had never seen this movie, and I didn't know how little I knew about it. I know that it sounds dumb. I didn't realize Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't in this movie.
I have to say, the things you're saying upset me so much.
Yeah, that's fair. That's right.
I can't believe you've never seen this movie. I can't believe you've never seen any of them.
No. I've seen some of Halloween, I guess, and in my mind they were the same movie.
Not the same. Have you seen, Freddy movies?
Yes, pieces of them.
Okay.
And they scare me.
I can't believe you've never seen this. This is, such a big part of horror.
Yep.
So many movies, draw on this for inspiration, or they repeat stuff. There's so many jokes.
I know, it's very on brand for me to not have seen it. This is our podcast. This is the deal. I have hated scary movies always, or I thought I hated them, but then was weirdly obsessed and would read Wikipedias for horror movies that I was too scared to watch but had to know what happened in them.
I've done that too.
And then loved movies that I didn't think of as horror, loved Jaws, loved Pan's Labyrinth. I watched The Terror, loved that whole series, but was scared of everything else. And now I'm bravely going where I dared not go before, because the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
I love horror movies. I'm a weird horror nerd because I don't love all horror. There's a lot of horror I don't like, but the things that I do like, I love. And I was a film major in college, and I took a horror class, and I really got an education in it and had to write a million term papers on Halloween and Peeping Tom and Eyes Without a Face, all these classic movies, and just was instantly in love with this. I've been in love with horror movies probably since I was a little kid. My favorite movie when I was little was, I used to call it Hi Jack, Hi David, which is American Werewolf in London. But they keep saying hi. They say Hi Jack, Hi David to each other throughout the movie. So when I was 4, I'd be I want to watch Hi Jack, Hi David all the time. It was my favorite. And I loved Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh, yeah. I watched Are You Afraid of the Dark, but then I couldn't sleep. And I remember very vividly, one time I slept over at my friend's house and we watched Tales from the Crypt, which was way scarier.
Yes. And I used to watch that. Well, the opening for that used to scare the shit out of me. And that music probably still scares me if I heard it. But Are You Afraid of the Dark was seminal for my scaring experience because it taught me a lot of what scares me. I learned that I was claustrophobic from watching that show. I learned that...
What episode?
That was the one with Neve Campbell.
Oh, I haven't seen that one, I don't think.
It's a great one about this chef who makes soup, and it's you can only have it once in your life, but the soup is made from what scares you. But the chef would lock people in a room downstairs, and the room, whatever you fear, would show up, and your fear would turn into the soup. I don't understand. But Neve Campbell goes into the room, and the guy who's her friend or boyfriend or whatever is don't think of anything. It won't appear if you don't think of it, what you're scared of. And she's you don't understand. The room is what scares me. And then the room starts getting smaller. And I was shit, I got that too. What is that?
I've had the opposite too, where I get really scared. I remember as a kid sleeping on my parents' floor, being really afraid and feeling the weight of the space. Everything felt so open, whatever the opposite of claustrophobia is.
Agoraphobia.
But I wasn't afraid of going outside.
Wasn't that afraid of open spaces, though?
Is it? I always think those are the people that don't leave their house.
Maybe there's a different one for open spaces.
There might be. I was lying on the floor and I was it felt like all the cushions and myself were just going to float up. There was too much space and almost we were weightless and could float away, and it was scary.
I don't want to go on a cruise because I don't like open spaces, but I don't like closed spaces, and a cruise is you're both.
This is just a recipe for us to never be happy is what we're describing.
Well, I will never go on a cruise. That is established fact. My husband knew that when he married me.
Yeah.
That is in the contract of marriage.
Afraid of confined spaces, afraid of open spaces. I'm afraid of success. I'm afraid of failure. It's I'm just going to be miserable.
Spiders, also don't like them.
I don't mind spiders.
Not a fan.
They're artists,
Not a fan. But so growing up, I watched all of that. Twin Peaks always really scared me. Mm-hmm. My dad is really into David Lynch, so I was watching Twin Peaks when I was 4.
So irresponsible of him.
Oh, my mom was so mad. And that is still the scary. Twin Peaks is probably the scariest thing I've ever seen.
I have seen Fire Walk with Me with my sociopathic ex-boyfriend.
It's so that'll be fun scary.
Too. I wasn't scared of it. So this is what I think is going to be so interesting for us. Our fears are so different. I'm terrified of home invasion. I've read the Wikipedia for Funny Games several times because I've like labored over the details, and I knew all of it, but I've been so scared to ever watch it. I am terrified of somebody breaking into the house, but you're afraid of ghosts and spirits.
100%.
And I'm fine.
I feel like I could hide from a person, but I can't hide from a ghost. Or like demon possession. Anything supernatural really freaks me out because it's like there's no rules. You're done.
Yeah.
I can't logic my way around a ghost.
I guess I can't logic my way around somebody like breaking in and trying to kill me. I'm not strong. I don't have weapons. I don't have coordination. A ghost, I feel like if I'm possessed, I'm not even aware of what's happening. Big deal.
Oh, no. See, it's the claustrophobia thing where I'm like, I'm going to be trapped in my body and I'm not going to be able to get out. Like the ultimate claustrophobia.
The scariest thing to me, the only time that I can think of where I was really scared of supernatural stuff, one was Blair Witch 2, which was not a good movie, but it was...
Book of Shadows.
Yeah. It was because they are hurting people and they're not aware of it. And I remember seeing that and being like, what if I kill my whole family and I don't even know I'm doing it? And that really fucked me up. And I was like, maybe I can lock myself in my bedroom. And then I was like, but demon me is going to know how to unlock the door and kill my family anyway. So there was that. And then Sam Raimi's The Gift with Katie Holmes and Greg Kinnear and Cate Blanchett. I remember there being like images of dead and floating in the tree. And that really scared me.
For me, it was the pilot of Twin Peaks. Is about Laura Palmer is this girl who disappears and they find her body and she's dead. It's really sad. But the mom, the episode starts and the mom is like going into her bedroom like normal and is like, Laura, breakfast. She's not there. She leaves. The whole episode happens. They find Laura dead, wrapped in plastic. The mom has gone through this horrible day of finding out her daughter has been murdered. That night she's laying on the couch and she's just kind of thinking about the day. And she flashes back to that scene we already saw, her walking in and looking. But this time, she's like really paying attention to what happened. Whereas in life, you just walk into a room, leave because your brain is like, I don't need to record this information. But so when she's going back over her memory, she's really thinking about it and she sees a man crouching in the corner, hiding in her daughter's bedroom. And that is something that I have never fucking gotten out of my head. And I'm still scared of, like, corners in my bedroom. I'm scared of, like, waking up and seeing Bob, the guy who played Bob, in my room. It's, like, haunted me my entire life.
I had that with Urban Legend where I would check the backseat of my car every time I got in, and I still do it.
I still do that. And I check the trunk. I check both of them.
Because I figure from the trunk, they can't kill me while I'm driving if they're in the trunk.
I have a SUV, so they could.
They could. Yeah, that's
smart. They could
smart.
easily jump over.
Somebody that I knew went to the mall, was driving home, got out, to go into her home and live her life, and somebody opened the back door and climbed out. And what had happened was while she was parked, a homeless man, just looking for a place to go to sleep, found her car unlocked and went inside and took a nap. And she drove home with him in the backseat without realizing.
How did she find out about it?
Because when she got out, he got out. And then later she pieced together. Yeah. She got out of her car.
Well, I also have like OCD and I lock everything like 6 times.
Yeah, we're the perfect scaredy cats to watch a bunch of horror movies.
But I love certain horror movies.
Yeah.
Like Friday the 13th. I love this movie so much because I don't want to be murdered in real life. I love slasher movies. Like I said, I'm very particular about what I love. I don't like the strangers. I'm not into I'm going to kill you and it's going to be really sad and realistic. I'm into slasher movies that are obviously fake, obviously makeup, where there's like comedy and like the characters you're not super invested in. So when they die, you're not like really sad.
We are such opposites.
I love teenagers. I'm obsessed with like high school culture and college and like young life, which gets weirder the older I get. I just love all of that. And I love the romance between like people and like, especially in like all of the Friday the 13th, sex is such a big part of it because if you have sex, you die.
Right. I have enough shame about sex. I don't need that.
Love it. Love it. And there's always a final girl in these movies. I mean, I haven't gone through and so I can't say 100% there's one in every one of those. But in like the slasher genre, it's all about the final girl.
What's the appeal of the final girl?
Okay. I'm glad you asked. So I was thinking about this when we said we were going to do a podcast. I was like, what do I love about horror? Why have I always felt like horror is so empowering for me when most people think that horror is like very misogynistic and against women? And this is what it is that in action movies, a man is always saving the woman. But in horror movies, the woman always has to save herself. And she's always, a lot of these slasher movies, it's like a final girl at the end who has to defeat the killer, but is also the last one standing when all of the men have gone down. And she's a badass. And I watch these movies and it's like so inspiring because, like in this movie, Alice pretty quickly is like, dude, we should get out of here. And Bill is like, no, we gotta wait for Steve. It's 10 miles. Let's just stay. It'll be fine. And Alice is like, I really think we should go. And it's the woman in these movies that is always like the smart one that's like, women's intuition, something's not right. We need to get out of here. And it's the male patriarchy that's like, it's in your head, you're crazy.
I do love, spoiler, but I'm assuming you wouldn't be listening to this if you haven't already watched Friday the 13th. I do love that the killer is a female, a woman, a lady, whatever.
This
I
is
do like that.
pre-Jason.
Yeah, it's a she's right behind you, but you don't know that. Mm-hmm. And that's cool.
It's also disarming because when Alice sees her, she's not scared of her.
I love that she's in like a sweater. She looks so harmless and sweet.
Yeah, she's Mrs. Voorhees. She's somebody's mother.
Right. The mothers aren't killers. Or are they?
Mm-hmm. Women can be just as lethal as men.
I think that's important. I heard a comedian the other day going like, women are smart. And it's like, well, women are everything. They're smart, they're dumb, they're strong, they're weak, they're people, just like men are. And that means they can kill people, just like men can.
Yeah, and they can also stop people.
Yeah, they can also save the day.
They can be the hero. And Alice is the hero of this movie.
Yeah.
She's the only one that makes it out alive.
Right, right. Although, interestingly, and maybe this is also a metaphor for our white male culture, is like even with the final girl living at the end, usually they'll come back so you can have 12 more. The white male is still undefeatable.
But the white woman is defeatable. Jason's mother never comes back.
The white woman is defeatable. The white man is not.
But the rest of this franchise is Jason.
Mrs. Voorhees is done. Jason never dies. What do you think of that?
I mean, there's not a lot of logic in this because Jason died as a child and he comes back as like a full-grown adult male.
So we started to talk about this. I was like, so Jason's a ghost? And you were almost appalled at the question?
He's not a ghost. I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. He's not a ghost. Ghosts are like invisible.
I mean...
He is clearly somebody who gets stabbed and you can touch and he can touch you.
Well, I didn't see him get stabbed.
Yeah, well, you haven't seen him yet.
Yeah. I saw him pop out of the lake.
As a small child.
Yeah.
Jason is... There's, like, not really a definition. He's just Jason. I don't know why you want to put a label on him. He has one goal, which is to avenge his own death on everybody. He is
always
not,
at the camp.
Okay, so the first few movies it's at the camp, and then the world expands. There's Jason Takes Manhattan, where he gets on a cruise ship and he goes to New York. So, and then Jason X, he's in space. So he's not limited to your constraints of the camp. Okay. He's got beef with people at the camp. And then when he really sits down and thinks about it, he's got beef with a lot of other people, too. And he's going to open the world up.
So who else has he got beef with?
Anybody who's not watching him swim when he was a kid.
So all of us. Everyone in the world.
Yes.
Okay.
Just pay, I think the moral of the story is if you're going to do a job, just pay attention.
Theoretically, couldn't he and Mrs. Voorhees just be after the guy who did the hiring, who's hiring all these unfit teenagers for work that they're not cut out to do?
He's after them, too. There's kind of something great about Jason and, like, he doesn't care. He's after everybody. Everybody is at fault. Everybody is to blame. And he's mad.
He's got an axe to grind, a literal axe to grind.
Well, he has a machete. But Miss Voorhees has an axe to grind.
Yeah, it's true. It's Mrs. Voorhees, but it's also, like, under the influence of Jason.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Great performance by Betsy Palmer. Well, let's get into the movie for a minute. You've never seen this.
Mm-mm.
Welcome to Camp Crystal Lake.
Oh, my God. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I sent you a picture of a postcard that's at Gallery 1988 on show right now for Welcome to Camp Crystal Lake. And you wrote back, "What is this? I want to see it." And I said, "This is Friday the 13th. I can't believe you had never heard of Camp Crystal Lake.
Nope.
When my parents got divorced, my dad moved to Illinois, and he lived in Crystal Lake, Illinois. And while I was there, I could not get over this. And
how did you sleep?
Nobody blinked an eye at it. Nobody thought it was funny. Nobody thought it was interesting. The whole of, like, Crystal Lake, Illinois was like, what's the big deal? I was like, are you kidding me? This is the best thing I've ever heard. There's a town called Crystal Lake? Why aren't there shirts? Like, I wanted to see Jason stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
So I love this movie so much. The classic setup of these people are going We have all these counselors who are like coming to town to start to open this camp because the camp has been closed for like 20 years. The very first scene is in 1958. The camp is like bustling. And we have these two counselors that are upstairs and they're going to make out, maybe have sex. It doesn't get that far because Mrs. Voorhees comes in and murders them.
And now, once we've seen the end of the movie, we're to understand that he's just drowned.
Yes.
So where was she? Why wasn't she watching him?
She was the cook.
So why doesn't she get killed?
Because she wasn't in charge. She was at camp working. She's a single mother with a job. She can't do everything. She enrolled him in camp. The counselors were supposed to be watching him while the kids were swimming, but they were too busy making out, not doing their job.
Okay, here's where I'm confused, because we see all the kids are sleeping, and all the counselors are sort of just like singing around the fire or whatever. So they leave to make out, but they're not leaving kids in the water. They're leaving their little campfire.
No, but earlier, when Jason drowned, first of all,
maybe I'm not
no,
following
none of
that.
These counselors seem to be too affected that a kid just died.
Yeah. I
They're
thought it
still
must have been
horny.
happening while...
No, it happened during the day. It wouldn't have happened at night.
Okay, I see.
So at this
Yeah,
camp,
nobody cares. They do deserve to
They're
die. No one gives a
teenagers.
shit that this little boy drowned.
So the counselors go upstairs to make out, and Mrs. Voorhees comes in and murders them both. Classic opening of a horror movie where it starts with a kill. That's like horror 101.
It is. Like one of my favorites, Jaws.
Yes.
That's the way to go. I would like to point out that the camp was established in 1935, so it managed to stay open for 33 years without incident.
Well, now to be fair, we don't know that there wasn't an incident.
That's true.
We just know that there was an eventual mother pre-1958. They might have just been like, oh, that sucks. My kid died.
Yeah, that's true. There might have been casualties and just nobody murdered anyone.
Right.
Okay. So they're getting along pretty well until 1958 when Mrs. Voorhees strikes.
Yes, Jason dies. That's the first tragedy. And then those two counselors are killed.
As they're going up the stairs, she goes, "Does Marianne kiss as good as I do?"
No.
Like, I would have watched just their story play out. What does Marianne think about this? Does she know that you're going upstairs with this other girl right now?
Well, and this movie came out 2 years after Halloween. It was made specifically because Halloween was such a hit that they were like, we got to make one just like it. And Halloween starts out through the eyes of the killer POV, which really started, I want to say Peeping Tom in the 60s was the first movie to do that. If I'm wrong, let me know. But from my memory in film school, when we had to watch Peeping Tom, that's the whole reason we watched it, was because it was the first movie that put you in the killer's POV. And then that was really popular in these slasher movies. And they do it with Michael Myers. It's so fucking good when they do it in that opening, because then it reveals that it's a child and it's so scary. But in this one, they do it too, and it's such a scary thing. Every time, you can tell when you're in the killer's POV and that these people are being watched. And what is so great about Friday the 13th, which is different than a movie like Halloween. Halloween has music the whole way through, but Friday the 13th is silent unless the killer's nearby.
Yeah.
And then you start to get different variations of music, and it'll get louder the more intense, but it's so eerie.
There's one thing I liked a lot of Mrs. Voorhees' theme.
I can't do it, but it's like...
That part actually took me out of it. It made me think
No,
of...
that's the classic theme for it. I love it so much.
made me think of like, ooga chaka, ooga
It's so
chaka.
scary.
Not to me.
I love it.
The rest of it scared me. The like high-pitched sounds scared
Well,
me.
there was a lot of it that felt reminiscent of Psycho. There was some that felt reminiscent of Jaws.
I just the...
Well, it sounds like they're saying kill, kill, kill.
Then we have Annie. She's just trying to get there.
Yeah, so
She's
then
excited
we
to have a job.
cut to Friday, June 13th, present day, 1980. And Annie is wandering the town. How she got there, where she's going. I mean, she is like the greatest, right? She
Right.
is a woman on her own, got a job for the summer, and she's got to figure out how to like rub 2 cents together to get there.
She's got a backpack and a whole lot of spunk.
I love how friendly everybody is in the 70s, because it's like she walks up to a dog and she's like, "Hiya, do you speak English? How far to Camp Crystal Lake?" It's the greatest. I love it so much. And she doesn't believe anybody when they tell her that you shouldn't go to Camp Blood.
I also love that they call him Crazy Ralph, but they're saying the same things he is.
Yeah, but they're
like-
not hiding in the pantry.
Yeah, that's true. But he acts like it's so insane. And then he's like, "Come on, I'll drive you." And then he's like, "Don't go." Well, why are you driving her then? Don't facilitate her death and then tell her not to die. Pick a side, buddy.
Yeah. I can't defend him. He also grabbed her ass.
He did. And right before that, he said, are all the girls going to be as good looking as you?
Yeah, and Steve later says when he's at the diner, I got to get back to the camp. They're all babes in the woods. And I mean that like in two ways.
On every level or something.
Yeah, that's what it was. And I was like, ugh. There's only 3 women, but they can't stop talking about it like there's a million of these women at the club.
They are hot, but I will say this was a time that it really hit me where I was like, white people all look the same. All of these people are interchangeable.
What are you talking about? Racist. Alice has like this amazing short haircut.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Alice to me, there's Kevin Bacon, and then there's like woman Kevin Bacon. And Alice
That's
to
Marcy.
Me. Alice to me
Alice
is woman
is the main
Kevin.
character.
Yes. She to me is woman Kevin Bacon.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were saying Kevin Bacon's girlfriend.
No. And let's go over this cast. But to me, There's Annie, who I loved and remember her name. Then there's Kevin Bacon. Then there's Kevin Bacon's
Jack.
Girlfriend.
Marcy.
Then there's standard white guy who kind of looks like a poor man's...
Griffin Dunn.
Yes.
That's Ned. So there's Ned the prankster, who I hate. I hate pranksters.
Uh-huh.
When he shoots that bow and arrow at...
Risky.
Brenda.
Mm-hmm. Brenda is Jennifer Garner.
When he does that, it's like, go fuck yourself. You could have really hurt her.
Yeah.
And he's laughing about it. That kind of like prankster tomfoolery makes me livid.
It's like that moment in Clueless where they dangle Ty off the edge of the balcony.
Yeah, that's not okay. That's like psychotic.
Yeah, it's psychotic. It's crazy. I mean, you have to be a really good shot to do that, and you should have the other person's consent, and you can do that as like an act, like a magic show with a magician's assistant, which she wasn't. So
I'm also like, I've always been a mother to where I'm like, that is dangerous. You should not do that.
Yeah, you should not do that. Wasn't it somebody who accidentally killed his wife that way? Was like, look, I can shoot an apple off the top of her head, and then he killed her.
That I don't know.
Burroughs.
And then we have Bill. Bill is the third white man. And he's the one who's also like trying to talk Annie out of getting help all the time. Mm-hmm. And then you have Steve, who is like in charge. He's the most adultish of them, who clearly has a thing for Alice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Seems like they used to date maybe.
Or like they had a one-night stand.
Like, can you forgive me? Or there's some line like that that's like, okay, something happened between them.
It seemed like they just hooked up, and it didn't go great, and she was going to leave, and he's kind of like, give me another chance, baby.
Yeah, she's like, I got things to do in the city.
Yeah.
Which...
Yeah. I love that there's like not really any character development, but then they do make her an artist, and he's like looking through her sketchbook, and she's drawn him.
Yes.
That's like the little bit they go out of their way to develop, but then it goes nowhere.
Right.
Yeah.
That's Friday the 13th. These are not character development movies. The most character development we get is always Jason. Jason gets the most story.
That's true.
We get to follow him through like 12 movies.
We do know that Annie has a passion for children, and then Alice is an artist. That's like the most we learn about any of their aspirations or ambitions or dreams outside of being at camp.
Well, Ned wants to hook up with somebody because he's the third wheel.
So not only did Mrs. Voorhees rob Annie of her life, she robbed
Ned the chance to bang Annie.
That's right. It's really
I bet they would have really hit it off.
I bet they would have.
Annie seemed very jovial. I bet she would have laughed at those pranks.
She would have liked it. She's
Brenda
very
was not
agreeable.
as into it.
No.
I liked Brenda.
Brenda looks like Jennifer Garner.
I get what you're saying. She could be like maybe a sister, like how a sister kind of looks like her, but I don't think she looks like Jennifer Garner.
Okay, well, you can use your character names and I'll use mine.
So we have our harbinger. Ralph comes in and he said, "You'll never come back again. It's got a death curse." I love Ralph so much.
Yeah,
I just
he's
like
great.
the foreshadowing of all this. I love the ominous tones. This is what I like about horror. I like all of that, the fear that's kind of building about a curse on this place, which leads back to like Friday the 13th being unlucky and, you know, black cats and all that stuff. Okay, so Annie's in the truck with this guy who's giving her the ride, and he says, "Did your boss tell you what happened?" And he's like, "You should quit. You should quit now." It's jinxed. 2 kids were murdered in 1958. There was a drowning in 1957. There have been fires. He said something about bad water.
Oh, yeah.
So there's all this foreshadowing, but I love if you know that it's Miss Voorhees, it's like, okay, there was a drowning. He puts them in different order, though. You know what? I just realized he says there was a drowning in 1957. So the drowning was the year before.
And so it's the following year that she kills them.
She returns the next summer to kill people.
that
She
makes
needed
sense.
to take the year to grieve. I'm sorry, I was very mixed up.
Then this time she does it on his birthday. So why didn't she do it?
Yeah, so she comes back. Friday the 13th is his birthday. But they don't say June 13th.
Right.
They say Friday the 13th.
Yeah. It could be any month.
It could have been any month, and it just so happens that it was good luck that the camp opened on a bad luck day.
Good luck for Mrs. Voorhees.
But so the counselors are coming. They're coming like 2 weeks before all the kids get there because they have to fix up the camp, which is a little bit strange because the truck driver says they put $25,000 into fixing up the camp. But if they put $25,000 in there, why is Alice fixing the roof?
Right. Yeah.
I wonder where all that money went.
It also felt like, yeah, it's a very good point. It also felt like Alice was not committed to staying for camp. Like, was she just there because she was hooking up with Mustache?
I love when we meet Alice that she is fixing the roof herself. And Steve is just watching her.
Yeah.
She's such a badass. Steve is the one who's standing there topless. And she's the one doing manual labor.
Yeah.
She's not asking for help. It's great.
She does just like hammer one nail in and then she's done.
No, she does a couple nails. Because they're like in her mouth.
Yeah.
She's like hanging the gutters back on or something.
All right. Okay.
And then we get the other car. So our other characters, we've got Jack, his girlfriend Marcy, and Ned the prankster. They arrive and they get put to work right away.
Annie gets picked up. We don't see the driver. They seem like a mute. It's a little bit clunky as you're watching because Annie is talking and nobody is ever responding to her. But we're in the point of view of the driver, which we'll later learn is Mrs. Voorhees. She does the thing that you always want them to do, which is like when the person doesn't stop and they're going the wrong way, she jumps out of the car.
Because she's also a badass.
Exactly. She's not just like, I'll ride with this. And she's not fooled just because it's a woman driving, which I think is the other cool thing. We don't know that at the time, but it would be easy to be like, oh, she's just an old lady. Maybe she's going the wrong way.
Her survival skills definitely kick in because they pass the street where the camp is. And she's like, oh, I think you missed the turn. And she's still like, jolly. And then the driver speeds up. And I love that Annie is like, oh, shit, I got to get the fuck out of this car.
Yeah.
She doesn't, they don't make her the girl that's like, oh, excuse me, did you hear me? She's like, I got to go. I'm going to leave all my stuff in the car and get out.
Good for her. She does it.
Great. But then the car stops.
The car stops. She's being followed.
And she gets hurt because she jumped out of a speeding car onto like a dirt road with rocks.
I wonder if she's a stunt person. Like in the opening of Jaws, that actress does a great job. She's like a stunt person. So then I was like, all right, something's going to pop up and scare me, right? Because she's like stumbling around and I'm waiting for the pop out. But then when it happens, I still jumped.
And it's such a scary scene, I think. It's broad daylight, but it's how you get disoriented in the woods. Like she's hurt and she's limping, but she's just running, and it is kind of like, where are you going to hide?
Right, there's nowhere to hide.
Because she's in plaid, she's in like a pink sweater wrapped around her waist. Like she kind of stands out, and they're not like thick trees. It's a lot of brush, so she can't like hide behind a tree or something. Every time I see that scene, I get sad because it's just like the panic of like, where are you going to go?
Right. That's how I feel about home invasion stuff. I'm like, there's only so many options.
This is why I don't go camping. The woods, I just don't like them at all.
And I love to camp.
Well, and she slows down. She keeps looking behind her, and she slows down because she's kind of like already lost.
She's disoriented.
Because I even had that feeling of like, let's say she keeps going and the killer doesn't catch her, where is she going to go?
Right.
She doesn't know where she is in the middle of the woods. There was that case recently. There was that woman who was camping with her husband out here. I want to say in like the desert. And her husband went to move the car, and he came back and his wife was gone. And they put out like a search for her, and they found her 3 days later. She had her little dog with her. And what happened was her husband went to move the car, and then some guy came out with a knife or something and was like trying to get her, and she took off into the woods, and she hid out for a while. And then at night, I think she climbed a tree or something, but then she got down and she tried to find her way back, and she was so disoriented that she was then just lost for like 3 days. But it was that thing of like, at first the threat is the person, and then once you're safe from the person,
the location,
now you're in the middle of nowhere. And that's all I could think when I watched that scene. It's like, poor Annie. She's like, she's not going to make it out.
No. Why not just take her to the camp and kill her there like everybody else? I guess it's just like, get a jump on it. Might as well get a head start.
Starting.
Yeah. All right. Time to start.
So male camp counselors, number one victim. Then we get female camp counselor. That's number 2. Now we jump to present day, and
80s.
Annie is our first victim. But in the order of things, she's victim number 3.
4 if you count Jason. He's a victim of neglect.
But not of Mrs. Voorhees.
The way she dies, she gets her throat slit, and then she's crying. But she's crying like she's just been dumped. Like, the expression on her face doesn't look like I'm dying.
It breaks my heart, though. It's so upsetting.
So that's what's surprising to me is I kind of laughed and made fun of it in my head, but then it is the thing that scared me the most and the scene that I can see most vividly. And that's like the most potent scene in the movie for me.
Okay, it's not mine, but there's a lot of sad stuff in it.
I have 3 images that scared me most, and we'll get to the other ones in order, but that was the first one where I was like, I wanted to laugh at it because it felt incongruous. You know, she looks sad, not like she's dying. And maybe there's just something weird and poetic about that hit me.
Yeah. I love the cut from Annie's murder, too. The counselor is just, like, relaxing at the lake with the line, if you were a flavor of ice cream, what would it be? And the girl says, Rocky Road. And there's, like, no explanation of why. It's just, like, they're living their life. This is summer. They've done their work for the day, and now they're in bikinis, and they're swimming, and they're having a great time. But there is a real death in this movie.
What do you mean?
R.I.P. the snake.
Oh, my God, I hated that.
In Alice's cabin.
I did not need to see them kill a snake. I really didn't.
Yes. That was a real snake that died.
I didn't like it.
That was the real murder.
I was not happy to see that.
So Alice sees a snake in her cabin. She screams. Bill comes in and is like, what do you want me to do? And she's like, kill it. And then everybody else kind of piles in there. And Marcy is like, what's going on? And someone goes, there's a snake in here. And she goes, then why are we all here?
Oh, I didn't hear her say that. That was my thought. Yeah, why are you all crowding around? That's not fun.
It kind of establishes like this jovial, they're all getting along, they're all like laughing, pillows are being destroyed. It's great. It makes me want to go to camp.
They should not have killed that snake. And then the cop shows up and says, we ain't going to stand for no weirdness out here.
Well, the cop shows up and goes, all right, who are you people?
Yeah.
Like, that's his opening line.
And why?
And are you on drugs? It was a very, like, anti-hippie sentiment.
Yeah.
But he's looking for Ralph because word got out that Ralph is, like, headed toward them, which is, there's so much foreshadowing. And then it's like, of course, we're going to see Ralph later.
Of course. But it doesn't really go anywhere. I guess
Ralph
kind of
is hiding in the pantry. We see that next, where Alice is kind of in the kitchen, and she opens the pantry door, and Ralph is there, which would scare the shit out of me if I was Alice. And he says, I'm a messenger from God. You're doomed if you stay here. This place is cursed. It's a death curse. Go, go. God sent me to warn you. He says all these things. I love it so much. And they just kind of ignore him. I don't understand why nobody goes, what are you talking about? What death curse?
But even if he did say, oh, these people died and this thing happened and that thing happened, you'd be like, well, yeah, bad things happen.
But nobody's curious.
Yeah, that's true.
But when he leaves, Alice goes out, and as he's getting on his bicycle, he says, like, again, you're doomed. But it's kind of, like, lingering on her, which makes me feel like it's foreshadowing that she's the final girl. That, like, everyone else is inside, and she's, like, really hearing what he's saying.
Yeah, she's listening. She's got
I
her
do
eyes
like
open.
the image, though, of, like, this scary, crazy guy then getting on a bicycle and being, like, just pedaling away.
It made me want to get on a bike, actually.
I made me not want to get on a bike. I was like,
really
bikes look stupid. And then they set up that they have to restart the generator, like, what an antique. It's kind of, there's all this, like, foreshadowing that this place isn't safe and that a storm is coming. And Marcy has that insane speech where she's like, I've been afraid of storms since I was a kid. I used to have this dream where there was rain coming down, but then it was blood.
And then he goes, it's just a dream. She's like, I know that. She wasn't saying it happened. She just was sharing a dream. And he's immediately mansplaining to her, it's just a dream.
I know, but I hate when anybody tells me their dream. Like, keep it to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's never interesting. I've never
happen.
heard somebody tell me a dream and been like, that was fascinating. I've always been in my own head like, okay, well, I'm not talking about my dream. Why are you boring me with your dream? The bodies are going to start piling up because Ned goes, he kind of is walking by himself because he's sad that he's the third wheel, and he sees somebody in a cabin. And we see, too, like, you just kind of see movement, but you don't see who it is, and then he disappears.
Yeah.
And then cut to Jack and Marcy are going to have sex and smoke pot. Brenda and Alice and Bill are in like what I'm going to call the main cabin. I've never been to summer camp.
Me neither.
I have been in 5th grade. My elementary school every year would do a week camp.
Mm-hmm.
So, like WEEK, not a week camp.
Yeah, I got it.
And it was something I looked forward to all of elementary school because like my brother and sister did it. And so in
Can you
October,
imagine if there was a week camp, WEAK, and it's like, you're not strong enough for a real camp. We'll send you to a week camp.
I would hope that's like hotel camp in the city.
That sounds fun.
But so we went to Camp Classen in Oklahoma, and it was the best, one of the best weeks of my life. It was so fun. And it was like your whole elementary class would go. So it's like 70 kids or something.
Oh my God.
And it was boy and girl, but it was like girls in cabins, boys in cabins. And you spent a week at camp with like all of your friends.
Was it the best?
It was a sad story. It was also the week my parents were getting divorced, but I didn't know it. And my mom was like overcompensating, and she sent me 1,000,000 letters even though I was there for a week. So I got to camp, and like the first day when they did mail call, there were like 7 letters, and it was from my mom and like my relatives, my mom's friends. She was like, everybody please send her letters at camp. And every day I had like a stack of letters. And then when I got home, my parents told me they were getting divorced.
Oh my God.
So I don't love camp. Yeah. Did you ever go to camp?
I never did.
Have you ever been camping?
I've been camping. I did it for the first time late in life, and I loved it. But I was with a boy I liked, and I felt safe. If I went by myself, I'm sure I'd be thinking of like Blair Witch Project.
I just want a cabin camp. I don't want to be in a tent.
I like the being outside part, and you get sweaty and dirty, and that part is fun to me.
I don't like anything you just said. So Alice, Bill, and Brenda are playing Strip Monopoly, which is Brenda's idea, which I love that it's the woman who's like, let's take our clothes off. I love Brenda. I think Brenda's maybe my favorite character in this movie.
I like Brenda a lot, too. I don't understand how she dies exactly. She's almost got this, like, Christ-like thing happening, the way that she's, like, bound.
I mean, we don't know how Ned dies either. He's just, we see him in the top
Well, his
bunk.
throat is, oh, yeah.
We don't see what happened to him. We just see his dead face. Yeah. But so they're playing Strip Monopoly. Instead of paying rent, you pay with clothes. Mm-hmm. And I love she goes, see if Marcy left any of that grass.
Yeah.
I could do cabin camping where we're smoking pot and playing games.
All right.
That sounds fun. So, okay, so Marcy and Jack have sex, which this is a staple of these movies. If you have sex, you die. Mm-hmm. And they say that a lot in, like, Scream, you know, with the rules.
Yeah.
But it doesn't quite work here every time because, like, Annie wasn't having sex, Ned wasn't having sex.
And they do suggest that our final girl recently got laid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting point. Okay, so this movie has a real, like, hot debate about whether it's misogynist or whether it's feminist.
Okay.
Do you have a stance before I tell you kind of what I read about it?
I thought it was feminist mostly because both the hero and the antagonist are women. And to me, that feels very balanced versus a man being really physically strong and then the woman, like, outsmarting him. It was like you have kind of the brains and the brawns. The brains and the brawn?
Yes.
Okay. So it's like Mrs. Voorhees is somehow creaming all these guys. That seems like a gross word. Mrs. Voorhees is seemingly without much of a struggle killing everybody.
They're not expecting it.
Yeah, she does have the element of surprise.
Mm-hmm. I do like that there's not like a lot of gratuitous female nudity in this. It doesn't feel like women are just there to get naked and be victims.
Although Marcy is running around in her underwear for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I took it more as like, she's free. She's like comfortable with her sexuality.
All right.
She puts her raincoat on. She's going to the bathroom.
For that, she deserves to die.
But so when I was doing my research on this movie, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert hated this movie. Mm-hmm. Gene Siskel hated this movie so much that in his review, he wrote something about like, with movies like this, if you reveal the killer, people won't want to see it. So I'm here to tell you the killer is Miss Voorhees. Like he revealed the killer in it and says like, I'm making a point to tell you this because you shouldn't see this movie. And then Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel like did a show called like The War on Women where they like brought up this movie and said how misogynist it was and really singled it out.
What did they cite as misogynist about it?
I didn't do more research on that.
Okay.
This is the limited research that I had. They're just killing women kind of thing.
But they're killing men too.
And that's kind of what I was reading on the other side of it is it's kind of balanced It's not like all the women die and the men live.
Right.
I mean, all the men die.
Yeah. Right.
So I do feel a little bit like, I don't think it's misogynist. Brenda's the one who wants to play strip monopoly.
Right.
And Annie is the one who's fixing the roof.
Right.
And it just feels like the women are capable in this.
I also feel like it's sort of equally rude to its characters in that there really isn't much character development. Like we talked about, there's some for Jason and some for Annie and some for Alice. But they're also like, some of them feel kind of dumb or like flimsy as characters, but so do the dudes. So that feels fine to me.
Right.
Yeah. At least it's even.
And I loved the scene. Probably my favorite scene in the whole movie is when I keep forgetting all their names. My favorite scene, I think, in this movie is when Marcy goes to the bathroom. That whole sequence I love so much.
Yeah.
And I love that she goes and she turns on the faucet and nothing happens. And she bends down and she fixes the pipe. And then she goes back and water comes out. And it's like amazing.
I totally didn't even catch that somehow.
Because then when Brenda goes in next, she turns on a faucet, nothing happens. And she goes to the next faucet, which is the one Marcy fixed. And she turns it and water comes out.
Whoa.
And it's like, Marcy was so cool. She was like, I'm going to fix this. I'm not going to the next sink. But that scene in the shower, I just really enjoy it. I think it's really scary, first of all.
Is that the one where she gets hit with the axe?
Yes.
Okay.
But her kind of going, she thinks that it might be Jack, her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
It's like maybe he's like hiding in there or something.
Right.
So she goes to the showers and she like pulls the curtain back, kind of like, gotcha. And it's so scary every time because you think that maybe somebody's hiding in the shower.
Oh.
And then she says, oh, I guess it's just in my head. And behind her is this great shot of you see the silhouette of the axe or the shadow of the axe. And then it comes down on her. And it's so scary. It's such a good sequence.
It is. I feel like there's a real missed opportunity there, which is the axe hits the light and makes like a little clanking sound. And then I don't know if it's because the score gets so loud that it drowns it out, but you don't hear the sound of the axe hitting her head.
Which I don't want to hear.
I feel like those are some of the best moments for scares where you don't even see it, but the sound makes you imagine it. I like that.
I don't like that stuff. I don't want to hear axe to bone. I like that it hits the light and that's the noise you hear.
I want that moment of like earning that death, of them having to figure out, okay, what sounds like, is it them chopping a watermelon? Like what gives them the sound that's closest to an axe hitting a human head? But they don't even try. There's just no sound for it.
Thank God. So we cut back to like strip Monopoly. So Brenda is in her bra and Bill is shirtless. I just feel like it's always establishing that like Alice is the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. And it starts pouring rain and Brenda's like, oh no, I better go back to my cabin. I think I left my windows open. Which when you're watching these movies, you're like, okay, Brenda's next.
Right. Of course.
Because you have to stay in the group. Oh, and we totally jumped over Kevin Bacon stuff. He dies right before Marcy. And it's the death that always freaks me out because he's laying in the bottom bunk smoking a joint. Above him, we see that Ned is dead, but he doesn't see it, nor does he smell it, I guess. And he's
fresh.
He's just lying there because Marcy went to the bathroom, and he's smoking a joint, and then a drop of blood drops on his forehead. Mm-hmm. And he kind of like rubs it away, and then a hand comes up from under the bed.
And I went, gah!
It's so scary. Holds his forehead down to the pillow, and then an arrow comes up through his neck from under the bed. Yeah,
pretty well done. It's also a funny thing where you're like, well, they're not going to kill Kevin Bacon because he's so famous, but he wasn't, so they do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is early Kevin Bacon. Mm-hmm. And I love the effects in this movie. This is Tom Savini, one of his early things. And they're so good. The makeup effects, I love so much. It's so scary. I also don't really understand the logistics of, like, how Mrs. Voorhees could, like, raise her hand up and be that strong to, like, pin him to the bed like that.
I knew exactly where to aim the arrow.
Doesn't matter. It scares me every time.
It works.
It's so scary, and I always know it's coming. But also, she's hiding under the bed the whole time they're having sex.
Yeah. She's a perv.
Waiting.
She's probably a little bit into it.
Well, she's also probably just getting fired up.
Yeah. Like, this is what happens. You guys bone and kids drown.
Yeah, she probably had a lot of aggression when she did the arrow.
Yeah, I'm sure. I did notice the first time we see anything from her POV that she's wearing a wedding ring. So it makes me wonder, is there a Mr. Voorhees? And where is he?
I don't know. I mean, when a kid dies, it's hard to stay in a marriage sometimes.
That's true.
Especially if you are having conversations with the kid through your mouth.
Yeah, that doesn't help at all. But she might still be hung up on Mr. Voorhees because she's still wearing her ring. So some sympathy for Mrs. Voorhees.
I don't think we ever find out what happened to his father. Spoiler.
I'm not afraid of a quick death. I think part of why I'm so scared of watching movies like Funny Games is I know that they're all like, that it's like torture stuff. I'm not that afraid of being murdered as long as I'm not like slowly murdered. If you're listening.
I'm afraid of being murdered anyway.
Yeah, me too.
And as in, like, any way you do it,
right.
I would like to not be murdered.
I would like to not be murdered. It's just like, if you're going to do it fast. And I think Mrs. Voorhees has enough of kindness to do that.
Yes, the deaths are all pretty quick. That's what I like about this movie, because, like I said, I don't like sad horror movies. I don't really want to see somebody get murdered. I don't enjoy that. I just like the quickness. Something happens, we move on. I guess what I love so much about slasher movies is I like jump scares. That, to me, is the fun of watching a scary movie, is open the door and Ralph is in the pantry and you jump. And it's that feeling of adrenaline that goes through you. It's the same as when you go to a haunted house. It's exciting, but it's not real.
I am so on the opposite end of the spectrum. I don't like the jump scares. I don't want it to be just like fun murder. Like, it's just a quick stabbing. I don't want it to be slow and tortuous either, because that makes me scared. But I like the catharsis. I like the developing the characters. Like, I love that in Jaws when dies, you care because you've become invested in their friendship and their relationship. And even when the boy dies early on, you're like, oh, that's so sad. And it gives stakes to what Brody's doing and trying to shut down the beach. Like, to me, that's what's so exciting is the catharsis.
I like the first death in that movie. I don't know that chick.
Yeah, right. I love that as setting the tone, but it's not why I love the movie. It's like a great intro, but then what makes me really care is I care about the characters. I know who they are. I want this family to be happy.
And I don't want to see people I like get killed. So I like these kind of movies where there's not a lot of character development. It's just the adrenaline. It's just that feeling of being spooked and creeped out. And then at the end, it's like, oh, great, I can go on with my life. I'm not having nightmares. I had a good time. It's like a roller coaster for me. It's that same kind of adrenaline. It's like going on a roller coaster.
And for me, it's like a catharsis. I want to see people go up against what really scares them and win or die trying.
I don't. I want fluff. Where are we? Marcy just died. So we've got 6 victims so far. We're moving on to number 7, which is Brenda, who went to her cabin because she left the windows open. Mm-hmm. And she goes into the bathroom where Marcy has just been murdered. And she does hear something, and she looks at the shower. But she, like I would, is like, must be nothing. I should go. I'm never going to be the person that's like, let me look. What is that? I should investigate. That's never been me. I've always been like, okay, well, there's nothing here. I'm just going to go. I would have gone back too. I think I relate most to Brenda in this movie. Which is funny to say because there's not like a lot of character development for me to relate to. And I love so much the choice that she was in her underwear in a raincoat, but then she goes back to her cabin and we see her in the old lady nightgown. It's like long sleeves, floor length, white nightgown. I don't know where it comes from. It's such a weird wardrobe choice. But she went from being like almost naked to you can't see any skin on her. Mm-hmm. And she goes to bed. She's reading a book and she hears, it's so creepy. Out in the rain, she hears, help me. Help me.
So creepy.
And she's kind of like, what? No, it stopped. Must be nothing. And then it's like, help me. Over here. And so she gets up to go look. And it sounds like a woman, but it also kind of sounds like a child.
Mm-hmm. I thought it sounded like a little girl.
Right. It's so creepy. And so she goes out to investigate. And it leads her to the archery where earlier Ned had shot an arrow at her. And then all the lights come up. And then we don't see her again. We just hear a scream.
We don't see her alive again. We see her corpse.
Right. But we don't see what happens to her. And it cuts to Alice, who then is like, oh, I thought I heard Brenda scream. And Bill, which this is like such a theme in these movies, the woman is like, I think I heard something. It was a scream. I think it was Brenda. And the man is like, I didn't hear anything. Mm-hmm. Like, just shuts her down. And it drives me crazy. These movies, it happens all the time. I had this when I started dating Brad. We saw Paranormal Activity, which is all about a woman who's like, something is wrong, and the man is like, you're crazy. And I made a rule with my husband, which was, if I say the house is haunted, it's haunted and we leave. Because either you married a crazy person, which would make you crazy, or I'm a sane person that is noticing that something is wrong.
I love that logic.
And I hate in these movies that men are so quick to be like, you're crazy.
I hope that was in your vows.
It wasn't.
Oh.
But we have to spend Christmas every year together. Was. So she's kind of like, this. Something's wrong. And, the lights go out. That's the next thing. And so he's like, I'm going to go check the generator. And she's like, I'll come with you. Like, she's smart.
Yeah.
Because when you get separated is when you die. And she's like, I'm not going to be left alone.
Yeah.
And they go.
They don't even know anyone's dead yet, but she has the sense.
Right. I guess this is before the generator. But they go looking for everyone. They go in the different cabins, and they can't find anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then they head back, and she's like, we should go. Let's get out of here. The rain has stopped. And he's like, it's 10 miles. Let's stay and wait for Steve. And I wonder what would have happened if they had just left. Yeah. Would Bill still be alive today?
I don't think so. I think Mrs. Voorhees knew where they were at all times. She was following. She would have killed them on their way.
But so they go back inside. And then this is when the generator quits and the lights go out. And he's like, you stay here and take a nap. Try to get some sleep. And he leaves. How she can sleep, I don't understand.
I know. It's amazing.
But so he goes to fix the generator. And that's the last we see of Bill and his orange poncho. Oh, there was another feminist moment that I loved, which is when they're looking for everybody. They go to the office, and they can't get in. It's locked.
She breaks the window.
She breaks the window like a badass.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we find out that the phones have been cut.
Yeah, that was I like that shot.
I just like her. I like that women are doing stuff at this camp.
All right, okay.
I'm more on this feminist train with everything that I see. So she goes to find Bill, and he's not there, but his poncho is. And then when she's leaving, the door closes, and he is pinned to it.
Yep, with
throat
arrows.
Cut. Oh. Lots of arrows. She got very upset.
That was the second moment. The second shot that scared me the most. That creeped me out. It was both throat slit. It was first Annie with her throat slit, and then it's Bill with his throat slit and all the arrows through.
But she got really mad at Bill. Everybody else just got their throat slit. He had like a bunch of violence on him.
I know, and he seemed like a good guy.
I know, I liked Bill.
Yeah, why'd she hate him so much?
Bill was the one that killed the snake, but he didn't want to.
Oh, poor snake, R.I.P. But it was very violent looking. It reminded me of, in Game of Thrones, the prostitute that Joffrey spears with arrows.
It reminded me of Randy, and spoilers for Scream 2. Wait,
let's wait, because we'll watch it.
But there's a line in that where she's like, I got a little knife happy. That's what it reminded me of.
Gotcha.
Like somebody just going crazy on him. But so then it's like, where did Steve go? Steve was in town at the diner, and then he heads back to camp, but his car dies, and a cop picks him up and is taking him the rest of the way. And then we get more kind of harbinger stuff because the cop is like, it's Friday the 13th. It's a full moon. There's more rapes, more homicides. People go crazy.
If you didn't get it by now, shit gon' go crazy.
But I also like the tie-in of like, it's still called Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
This is why.
Don't forget.
I feel like they try to explain it a couple times of like, it's because people go crazy. And then later they're like, it's because it's Jason's birthday.
Yeah, several times. And there are several shots of the full moon, but they still have to have people talk about how the moon is full.
Yes. Oh, and Steve, ever the man to shut down all of this, is like, coincidence. It's not science.
Oh, yeah.
More rapes, more murders. People go crazy. He's like,
it's a coincidence.
It's a coincidence. It's not science.
Yeah. I also love that he looks so creepy in that yellow raincoat that part of me was like, I knew he wasn't the killer, but part of me was like, he looks like the killer just because of his creepy yellow raincoat.
Well, and it's such a bummer because they say Bill is like, let's just wait for Steve to come back with the Jeep. And then he comes back without a Jeep. So there's no way out. I love that the cop just drops him off in the middle of the street at night in the woods.
Yeah.
So he's walking back to camp, and he sees a flashlight in his face, and he's like, oh, hey, what are you doing? Ugh.
You assume that she has to have a knife out because she kills them so quickly after they see her, but nobody's alarmed by the woman coming at them with a knife.
Because she's in a sweater.
I know, the sweater is very disarming.
It is.
But even in the beginning, it's like, oh, we were just fooling around. But they're so calm. They just are like teenagers in trouble as opposed to teenagers about to get murdered.
Stranger danger is real.
It is.
You should fear all strangers.
And sharp objects.
Yes.
Dangerous.
Also a show on HBO. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of our kills here. We've gotten a lot of kills. We have just Alice left. And she runs back to the cabin after she sees Bill. And she does that whole thing where she's trying to lock herself in, which I love her bravado.
I was like, look around first. What if the killer's inside with you? It made me anxious.
I get that, but I also get her being like, they're probably following me. And then she goes into the kitchen, and she's kind of hiding out, and that's when Brenda's body comes through the window. Very scary. And then she runs outside because she sees car lights coming, and it looks like a Jeep. Mm-hmm. And she thinks that it's our friend Steve, but we know that Steve left his car on the road. And earlier, the car driving Annie was a Jeep. They just happen to drive the same cars. So she runs out because she thinks that it's Steve and it's Miss Voorhees, but she's still like, oh my God, it's a nice lady in a sweater.
And Mrs. Voorhees is nice enough to introduce herself.
Yes, she's a friend of the Christies. And Alice is like, let's go, let's get out of here. And she's like, no, let me go take a look.
Yeah, I'm not scared.
Yes. And she goes in and she sees dead Brenda.
And then she says, whoever did that, this must be a monster, right? Doesn't she?
Yes, she does. Where am I? Hold on just a second. I wrote down some of the dialogue because I liked it. And Miss Voorhees is like, it's just this place and the storm. That's why you're upset.
Yeah.
She's like, no, my friends are dead.
No, I'm pretty sure it's more the dead friends than the storm.
She's like, they're going to kill you too. And Miss Voorhees is like, I'm not afraid. It's so ridiculous. So she says, after she sees dead Brenda, she says, Steve should have never reopened this place. Mm-hmm. And then she kind of goes through this whole story. A young boy drowned. The counselors were too distracted. They weren't paying attention. They were making out. They weren't watching. And then the music kind of starts. So you're starting to be like, oh, shit. Mm-hmm. Something's not right. Uh-huh. She says, I was a cook here. He wasn't being watched. He wasn't a good swimmer. His name was Jason. Jason is my son. I mean, I'm kind of out of order here, but you get the point.
Even me thinking like, oh, Jamie Lee Curtis is in this movie and not knowing anything about it, I did know the name Jason Voorhees. And I was like, once she says that she's Mrs. Voorhees, I was like, oh, we're in trouble.
Yes. She says, Jason is my son. My only son. Which I like that she has to clarify. Like, that's why I'm so upset. I don't have a replacement son. And today is his birthday, Friday the 13th. And then she really starts to turn. You let him drown. She's talking to Alice, who was not there. You let him drown. You didn't pay any attention. Look what you did to him. And then she attacks Alice. And now we get like a series of attacks, which I like these. So the rest of Friday the 13th are very supernatural. You know, you can stab Jason, you can do whatever, and it only slows him down. He just gets up and keeps moving. Mm-hmm. But Miss Voorhees gets hurt. And she, like, gets knocked out. And then she gets up and she goes after her. It's, like, real scrappy fighting.
Yeah, I like the scrappiness of their fighting. I mean, first, it's like, God, why doesn't Alice really go to town on her and kill her and get the vengeance for all of her friends who are dead? But then, once they're, like, on the shore, it gets real scrappy.
Yeah, so we get the first scrappy fighting in the cabin. And then Alice takes off. And Miss Voorhees finds her in another place where there's guns. She tries to shoot her and it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And then she starts throwing like twine at her and stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
It's just like so scrappy. And then Miss Voorhees slaps her. And then she slaps her again. And she slaps her like 3 or 4 times. And then she picks up Alice and she throws her down onto like a table. Then Alice gets away and she hides. I love that camera work because we see Miss Voorhees chase after her. And then the camera stays after Miss Voorhees leaves, and you see Alice, like, get up because she was hiding in the frame. There's so much camera stuff in this that I just love. I love these shots. And then Alice tries to escape again. She goes back to the first main cabin. I don't know why. And she hides in the pantry.
Yeah.
And that scene is so good because she's hiding in the pantry. We're with her. And you hear Miss Voorhees come in. You hear, like, the crashing. She's, like, throwing stuff around like angry killers do. And the light comes on, and you see the light peering in through the wood of the door. And there's a lock. I don't know why there's a lock inside a pantry, but there is. So she's locked herself in. And then you hear, like, the footsteps, and she leaves. And Alice kind of relaxes. And I love the shot so much because you're on Alice's face, and right above her, because she's crouched down, is the doorknob. And without sound,
it slowly
you just see the doorknob start moving. It's so scary. And then it frantically starts moving. And then you get the, like, she's beating down the door with, like, a hole in it. Mm-hmm. And she looks in.
Very The Shining, too.
Same year.
Crazy.
It reminded me so much of The Shining.
That's crazy.
Both movies have a woman trapped But in this one, the woman is the one who's beating down the door, and she unlocks it. And they fight again, and then they get out, and then they make their way to the beach. And that is so crazy to me because I don't understand why Alice just, like, sits next to a canoe. Why is she just, like, waiting it out? But then, of course, she sees, like, the shadow of Miss Voorhees. You think that it's going to surprise her, but she sees it, and she fights back.
Reflexes.
And they start with the oar of the canoe, but then the oar quickly fades away, and it's really just two women beating the shit out of each other in the sand.
I really liked the scrappiness there.
And then Alice, out of the corner of her eye, sees the machete from earlier that was used to kill the snake, and she grabs it. And without hesitation, she cuts off Miss Voorhees' head.
And then she's still, like, twitching. But almost more than twitching. She's, like, fully moving, like, the rest of, almost like the snake.
Right. Yeah. Foreshadowing. And then she gets in the canoe. You could almost
say she was the snake the whole time.
She gets in the canoe and she rows out, which I kind of understand because she's like, well, at least if I'm on water, I'll hear somebody coming. Because she's, like, so tired, and she wakes up the next day. And
that's my favorite shot. It's so pretty.
The reflection.
Yes.
So pretty.
Her in the boat and just, like, it's almost like it's mirror images of the beautiful sky.
And the music is so loud. And the music reminds me so much of the music in Twin Peaks. And this is like a decade before. But that's all I can think when I watch it is it's just like the soundtrack to Twin Peaks. And you see the police come, and they see her, and you're like, everything's going to be okay.
I do. I was like, why is she in the middle?
But there's only music in this movie when the killer's around.
Right.
And she sees him, and then out of nowhere,
he pulls her under.
Baby Jason
pops up
from
down.
the water, grabs her by the neck, and brings her back down. I remember when I first saw this, it scared me so much.
Do you think it's a better ending right there?
No, because it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't it?
No, because Jason's dead, so it doesn't make any sense. I like that it cuts to her waking up in the hospital, and it's so creepy. I love the ending. See, this is where we're going to differ.
Why does it make more sense? They just explain it to you, but it makes the same amount of sense.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
Like, Jason is dead, but he still pulls her under the water.
But he doesn't. It's not real. That was a dream.
But they did find her. They said they found her underwater. They thought that she had died.
But that whole part is a dream. As far as I can tell, that part's a dream. This is my interpretation of it.
At first, I thought it was a dream because she wakes up, and I'm like, oh, that never happened. But then once they're saying they found her underwater and they thought she was dead, and especially knowing that Jason comes back in the sequels. I thought they found her
in the water, like in a canoe.
Oh, I thought in the water, like underneath.
I thought it was like you're in the water, like you're in the middle of the water in that canoe.
Right, interesting.
So it's vague. We don't know.
Yeah.
Because she's not wet when she wakes up.
But then the fact that Jason does keep coming back.
But they didn't know that when they made this.
Yeah. But isn't that what that's referencing? Is he's dead, but he's not dead?
Well, that's kind of what I love about the ending is just the eeriness of it, where she wakes up in the hospital, and they're like, you're okay, you're okay. She's like, what about my friends? And they're like, they're all dead.
Sorry.
Let's give you a sedative and some hard truth. They're all dead. And we thought you were dead. But then she says, I wrote down the lines because I like them so much. She says, the boy, is he dead too? Jason, the boy in the lake. And they go, ma'am, we didn't find any boy. Then he's still there. And then it cuts to the lake, and the music comes up again. And it's like, he's still there, echoing in your brain, kind of. Great ending.
And how many times have you seen this movie, do you think?
A bunch. I have seen all of the Friday the 13th movies.
All 12?
Yes.
All right. And this is your favorite of them?
I don't know. I like this one a lot. It's the first. I think there's a lot of artistic merit to it. I like a lot of these shots. What did you think?
It isn't my favorite type of movie. I do like the character development more because you were saying, oh, I don't like to see a slow death. That's not fun. I like a quick death. I agree. A slow death to me is not fun, but a quick death is also not fun to me. I would rather see somebody facing something that really scares them versus something kind of, to me, a little more arbitrary of this woman seeking vengeance on basically anyone. So it was cool to see what obviously laid the groundwork for so many movies.
And this was, until last year, the most profitable horror franchise.
I know, it's
worldwide,
crazy.
Until Halloween came out last year.
It's amazing.
Installment.
I also thought it was very cool to look up that the director, Sean Cunningham, was born on New Year's Eve. Because
Oh.
Friday the 13th is such a, like, known date, and then obviously so is December 31st. So maybe he's got a thing for dates.
Are you scared of Friday the 13th in general?
No. Are you?
I always think it's a lucky day. My mom was born on May 13th, and so she always raised me to think it was really lucky. So I always watched a Friday the 13th movie on Friday the 13th. Not always this one. There's 12 to choose from.
Did you know that there's a real phobia, people that are afraid of Friday the 13th, and it's paraskevidekatriophobia?
I didn't know that. I don't have it. It's one of the few phobias I don't suffer from. I
That's
love
lucky.
Friday the 13th. It always makes me feel a little bit, like, giddy. I just like kind of that scary feeling in the air of, like, goblins and ghouls. It's got that
Yeah.
kind of, like, fun, like, let's go to Halloween Town in Burbank. And
It's like mini Halloween, the same way
Yeah.
like Reno is like a mini Vegas.
Oh, I love when there's a Friday the 13th in October. It's the best. Yeah, I don't think I'm very superstitious. I don't want to break any mirrors, though. I don't ever go under ladders. But I
Why?
don't mind if I see a black cat. I like cats.
Why the ladder? Why is that more real to you?
I don't know. Maybe it's from The Ring. There's an image of a ladder. There's something about going under a ladder that creeps me out. I don't like it.
I'm more creeped out going onto a ladder because you can fall, and that seems like tangibly scary.
No, I'd rather...
Be on it than under it.
Yeah, there's something about that. I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way. But I had to get over, like, stepping on cracks and some of these, like, OCD superstitions.
I used to have that too as a kid.
But I like Friday the 13th.
It was
and I
fun.
like the movie Friday the 13th.
I'm glad that I've finally seen it.
I find it scary. I think it's exciting. I laugh at certain parts of it. I think it hits all my emotions.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Yay.
See you next time. Happy Friday the 13th.
Be nice to a black cat.
Yeah, they need it.